So, go back to question number 8. What about the original verse about Abraham suggests that he could have been praying? In other words, what about that verse makes it make sense to suggest that this is a moment of prayer? So the first one is the obvious one. When it says Amad, it says Amad Sham et Pnei Adonai. He was not just standing, he was standing before God. And just that language of coming and standing before God, and indeed, not only standing before God, but speaking to God, at least in the first scene, is very much the language that we would use for tefillah. But even more than that, think about what kind of standing before God, speaking to God he was doing. He was at first pleading for mercy for the cities that God threatened. He was challenging God and questioning God's plan. He was trying to stand up for justice as he understood it. And in the second scene, where he went back to stand in the same place, he was mourning the destruction. He was processing his sadness, his fear, his emotions in facing this drastic event. These are actions that feel like prayer. It does not feel like a stretch to imagine this scene of Abraham in stone as a prayer scene. Now, think about the parallel to Pinchas, question number 11. I would say the most relevant piece of the parallel is with Abraham's first scene, his pleading. Why? Because in Pinchas, standing meant rising up before God to save people from God's destruction. Pinchas is seeking to save the nation from God's plague. He does it by acting violently, but he is seeking to save the rest of the people from the plague. Abraham, similarly, is trying to save these cities that God has threatened. They are rising up just before God to try to stave off God's destructive actions. The language is a stretch. Vayifalel, judging, versus yitpalel, praying. But in terms of the stories, it's a very strong parallel. They're rising up to try and quiet God's anger.